Hey everybody, Jason here from iAnimate. Hopefully you're all doing fantastic this week. So in this week's snippet, we're going to talk about truth in materials. So when I first started working at Disney way back when in 1995, and there was always this kind of concept of truth in materials. And what it really means is when you go to approach animating something, you want to give some consideration into what the actual object is made of, right? So when I first started as a student in animation, I was squashing and stretching everything. Like, even if it was a TV or something, I would make it squash and stretch like crazy. And it's not to say that that's wrong, but we have to know the style of animation that we're trying to achieve, right? And try to get that believability. And there was this believability concept in the truth and materials, right? So if, like, say, my glasses, I wouldn't squash and stretch these because they're made of hard material, right? My lower jaw, there's a lot of squash and stretch there, but maybe the skull itself wouldn't squash and stretch all that much, right? Let's say a dog's tail, right? So a dog's tail is a perfect example because you have like the extreme of Pluto, who's got a really thin tail, right? So Pluto's tail, like from the, let's say his back leg is sort of like this, right? Uh, his tail is really long and thin, right? Sort of like this. But with a dog's tail, there's actually bones in there, right? It's vertebrae, right? So, and they're thicker as they reach the top, right? And then they get thinner as they run down the length of the tail. So if we were going to do a more natural dog's tail, like from Lady and the Tramp or something like that, um, you want to be like a truth and material. So we wouldn't animate the same way we would animate a long tail like Pluto or Mickey Mouse or even a rat, right? So let's just take that into consideration, right? So if we're going to do like a dog's tail wagging, I'm just going to delete this pose right here. So like from the top view, right, we'll kind of draw the back end of the dog here and the tail sort of over here. And I'm looking down on the dog, right? So like the dog's tail will do this sort of wagging motion, right? And sometimes like it can be overdone, right? Sometimes you get this wagging motion that feels like the dog's tail is made of rubber. And actually, like, if you actually kind of stand next to a dog that's wagging its tail and it kind of hits you on the leg, and actually you can feel the force, right? So there's bones in there. And so it's going to be driven sort of by, where it's connected to the hip. And they have nerves and stuff in there, so they can just wag the tail by itself. But what I would normally do if I was animating this, I was trying to make a caricature of a dog's tail wagging. I would usually kind of have a little bit of the rear end wagging too, right? Just a little bit of motion side to side to help drive it. So it's not just like a wagging tail without the butt moving. So a small little bit of the butt moving too, which kind of helps it feel more connected, right? So if I was going to do like a dog's tail wagging, I would probably do this, right? So keeping here, and I wouldn't move that much, but like just maybe from there to there. And then we'll have the other extreme of the tail here. And basically on each extreme will be straight, right? Like this. Okay. Start like that. So we have this and this, right? And I've got a slight curve to it. So we'll see how that works out. But basically, like, if we start it, more or less straight with no S curve in there at all, right? And then when I'm going to do my breakdowns, that's where I'll start to make it flexible, right? So then it's going to be driven by here, right? By this part right here. And then this part back here is going to be the overlapping part, right? So this part's going to start to come this way, but this part will start to drag, right? So we'll get that little bit of drag in there, right? So this part will start to come over, and then this part will sort of drag backwards. So imagine like this part right here is still going this way, right? So it's going this way. So it might just be the part where it's going to start to break. Okay. And then we'll get this sort of feel. Okay. So we get that bending that way. Again, this is the looking down at a dog's tail wagging, right? So we get that kind of a feel. Okay. We'll do a couple more in here. So like right here. So now this is going to start to move fast, right? So we'll get this. So this is where it's changing directions, right? So it's coming from this way, and it's going to start to change direction and go that way, right? So in here, this would be the fastest point of the tail. because it's already changed directions, but we're just going to start to have a little bit more bend to it. So I'm doing basically a C right here, like a C curve. Okay. So the tip of the tail is over that way. I'll try and clean this up a little bit. So like that, okay. And then we get over to here, right? So now this part is going to start to slow down, but the end of the tail is going to still be dragging backwards, right? So this part here is slowing down, and then it's going to start to go the other way, right? Okay, so we get that dragging back this way. Okay, and then this is, you can almost see it happening here, where this, now the base of the tail is starting to go that way, while the end of the tail is starting to slow down, right? So we get just that little bit of breakdown right here, where this starts to go that way, and this starts to come this way. So you get a tiny little bit of an S curve in here, right? Like this is going to start to go that way. Okay. And then that's where it starts to break, right? So now this is going this way. This is still kind of overlapping that way, right? Okay. And then let's go ahead and we'll copy this pose here, copy, and I'll paste it down here. I'm not sure exactly how many frames we'll actually use for this, but now that's going this way. So now this is starting to go that way. And then the back end is following through, right? So this part's still going this way while this part's going this way. Okay. I'll start to drag a little bit more. So now this is going to be like a nice fast part right here where we're changing direction. So we're always going to kind of slow down just a little bit there. And then when it's going full speed this way, then we can have a little bit more drag. Okay. And then here is going this way. So this would be more of a kind of a natural tail wag, like from Lady and the Tramp. Okay, so it's still dragging back. Okay. And then this is where it's slowing down. Okay. And then this part right here is going to start to go this way, right? So it's slight little bit of a S curve. Like the S is sort of like this, you know, so this part's starting to go that way. Okay. We put on loop here, and then we can kind of see the way it's working, right? So let's delete this key now because we don't need that one. Okay, and that's doing out sort of at the end here. Now, if you were going to do, if you're going to do like more of a Mickey Mouse type tail, then we get an awful lot more drag out of it, you know, so we get a little bit more like this, right? If it's going to overlap, you know, and this is normally like a secondary thing. Usually we would use the, like if a dog is running and stopping and skating or rolling around or something like that, we'd animate the tail last because it's always going to be driven by the primary action of the body, right? But if it's just sitting there overlapping, just wagging like this is the sort of thing that I would do, right? And then how flexible the tail is will determine, like, you know, so if it's a really skinny long tail, like a rat tail, you know, like a rat would sort of, let's see, like this sort of a thing, like a rat's tail would, are a lot longer, right? And usually what we try to do is simplify it just a little bit because we try to get like a little bit of a shape out of it, right? So we don't want like too many bends in there. Like we wouldn't draw the rat's tail sort of like this, you know, because it would just not look very appealing. And even though like it's physically possible for the tail to go like that, usually in animation we want to try to make more appealing shapes, but still make it feel believable, right? And that's what that truth and material thing is, because it helps you make more believable animation.